Hey, Mr. Jason. Nathan wants to know if you could do a video on how to properly install and adjust a set of Avid BB5 disc brakes.
An Avid BB5? I got just the thing. All right, so here's what we've got. If you could hand me that Manitou, I almost said Marzocchi. I almost got Marzocchi on the brain. So what we have here is we've got a Manitou SX. This is straight from like 1999.
It's the one that came off my bike on the video that we did recently.
It's the one that was on Zeke's bike. So there are a couple of different mounts on these bikes and forks. There is what they call a post mount, which is what this one has, and there is an international standard. We've already talked about the difference between a post mount and an international standard, and as you can see in this video right here, we've got the post mount, and then right here we've got the international standard. But on this one, it's post mount, and we've got the Avid BB5 brake. Careful, do not drop the parts as you drop the parts. And it is super important. You need to make sure that these brakes, the parts, stay in order. Okay. Now, as you can see here in the up close picture, you need to make sure that the washers here are in a particular order because it makes a difference. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually show you how to mount and properly adjust this brake. You ready, Zeke?
Yep.
All right. As you can see, this brake, you've got several washers. You've got the concaved washer. You've got the half moon washer right here. You've got the brake, and then another half moon washer and the concaved. The reason why you need it in this order is because whenever you go to install the brake, before you tighten it down, it's supposed to be able to swivel whichever direction and easily be mounted to the most stubborn frames. Okay, so we're going to put the brake in place here, and we're going to thread this into the boss, making sure that it's threading in straight, and we're going to thread it most of the way in, but not all the way, and you will see why in this next step. So we're going to thread this in until it bottoms out right there, and then we're going to back it off just a little bit until the brake is able to move easily with no play. You want to repeat the same thing on the second bolt. Screw this in until it bottoms out, and then back it off just enough until the brake is able to move around with no play. Okay, so I've got my wheel right here. The disc has already been installed, but whenever you install the disc, I like to put a tiny bit of anti-seize or a tiny bit of grease on the threads itself, just a little bit. And then you want to actually make sure that you tighten this disc to 6 Newton meters, okay? No more, no less. And I've got my handy little torque wrench right here, and I'm just going to check these. Now, I already know that these are tightened to 6 Newton meters because I've already checked it before when I installed this disc onto this wheel years ago. But I'm just showing that I'm checking. All of these are to 6 Newton meters. And then I'm going to install the wheel onto this fork, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, so we're going to install the wheel. I'm going to line up the disc brake itself into the caliper. We're going to line up the dropouts, and it's super important that you make sure that this wheel is fully in the dropout before you adjust the brakes. Now be sure to lubricate your cable with a good Teflon lubricant. I suggest Triflow. So we're going to go ahead and get this nice and lubricated. And then we're going to install the cable. We're going to slide the cable into the clamp, and then we're going to make sure we take up as much slack on the cable as possible. So I'm going to pull on the cable while I move the arm just a little bit, and we're going to tighten the bolt down using a 5mm Allen. So what I've done here is I'm running this cable directly to the brake so as not to pull on the brake sideways. And then what we're going to do is we're going to feel the brake. Okay, this brake is a little bit too loose, so there is a red knob on the back of the BB5, and we're going to screw this red knob in just a couple of clicks. And if it's too tough for you, there's a Torx screw right there. It's a T25. You can actually put a tool on there and turn it. Once you get the brake cable tension the way you want, you're going to want to lightly pull on the brake, give the caliper a little bit of a wiggle. Okay, I'm going to pull it again, so we're going to pull that in lightly, and then we're going to tighten the two bolts in just lightly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give the brake a spin, or the wheel a spin, and if you'll notice, there's not a single sound going on. Now I'm going to hit the brake several times, and I'm going to see if the rotor moves. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the lever several times, and if you'll notice, if you see the rotor being pushed over, then the brake is a little bit off. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to give the wheel a light spin, and then I'm going to loosen the bolts just a little bit more, and I'm going to, I noticed that there was more rotor movement in this top area here, so I'm going to loosen this up a little bit more, and I'm going to push the caliper the direction that the disc was going. So I'm going to keep it spinning, and I'm going to adjust it until it makes contact. And that's too much contact. I'm going to keep on adjusting until I hear a light scraping. Okay, now I'm going to pull the lever several times, and you keep doing this over and over again until that rotor stays straight as an arrow. Now as you see right here, you've got the stationary pad up against the disc, you've got the piston going in and out, and the disc doesn't move. Now if you spin the wheel, you'll notice that the wheel spins easily, and it has absolutely no movement from that disc. That is the ideal adjustment right there. So I'm going to tighten these bolts down lightly some more. I'm going to give the wheel a spin. There's just a light rub on the stationary pad. See, the BB5 brake, you've got a stationary pad that you want to get as close to the disc as possible, and then you have a piston that actually ends up clamping the the rotor and causing drag. It allows the brake to work. And as you can see, this wheel here is still spinning. It's got the lightest amount of drag. I'm going to check the brake again, and that rotor is not moving at all. And then, after you're satisfied with how tight everything is, if your brake lever still feels good, if the rotor is not moving, and the caliper is ready to be tightened up, we're going to get a torque wrench. And we're going to tighten this. Now, be sure to check with your manufacturer, as far as the fork goes, but typically 8 Newton meters is what you need to do. That's actually what they said on this fork. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this to 8 Newton meters. I'm going to hold it for just a second. I'm going to go back to the other bolt, check it. We're going to re-inspect this. Brake feels great. Wheel is spinning great. There's just the tiniest bit of rub. And that brake is going to be perfect just about every time you do that. Now the next thing to do is to zip tie the brake cable onto the arch of this fork, and then I just have to build up the rest of the bike, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so this Avid BB5 is an excellent disc brake. I really love this. It's super reliable, it's very powerful. Excellent brake to go with. However, if you wanted a better brake than this, that is going to be the Avid BB7 brake right here. This is infinitely more adjustable because it has the red knob on the back to adjust the stationary pad. However, this has an additional adjustable pad for the piston side, and that makes this brake way more adjustable. It's actually a little easier to set up than the BB5. So the BB7 is actually my brake of choice. That's actually what I use on my bikes. Now, I'm a little concerned with the request from the person that was wanting me to do the video on this bike, or on this brake, I should say. He was saying that the brake either worked or it didn't, and that may not be with the brake itself. It could be with the choice of levers that he's using with the brake. Now, of course, you want to make sure that you're using a linear pull brake on this mountain bike BB5, and if you're using the wrong lever, that could affect how the brake works. Now, Avid does do a very nice lever that works very well with this. It's actually a Avid speed dial brake lever. It's got a red knob there that you can actually adjust the leverage of the brake lever. So you can actually make the brake a little more powerful, a little bit crisper. You can actually make it respond a little bit slower, a little bit mushier. So you can really tune the brake, and that brake lever actually works great on all linear pull brakes because you can really adjust it to your liking. After you get the brake adjusted, you want to actually secure the brake cable along the arch of the brake here, if your bike has an arch. And you want to use a good zip tie. This one that I'm using is adequate, but I'll probably add an extra one. We're going to use a zip tie gun to give us a nice clean cut. Alright, after you're done adjusting your brake don't forget to trim your cable to within an inch or an inch and a half from the clamp. And don't forget to put that cable tip on and crimp it in place, and you're good to go. Now this system of installing the disc brake works on just about everything. If you screw the caliper in all the way and then back off just a little bit where the brake just moves a little bit with no excessive play, lightly pull the brake lever, tighten the bolts in lightly, and then adjust from there. If it's a little bit off, you can actually go to the spot that's off the most and just give it a little bit of a push towards the direction that you want. If it's a dual piston brake, those are actually easier to adjust the way I'm talking about, because the pads, both pads retract, versus this one that has a single pad that retracts. This actually turned out great. I'm real happy with how this turned out. The adjustment turned out perfect, and this technique works with just about every single brake. It works with hydraulic as well as cable actuated. The Avid BB5 and BB7 and actually all the other brakes with a single piston, those are the hardest to adjust with my technique, or any technique. They're the hardest to adjust because you've got a stationary pad that you want to get to the disc as close as possible without touching if you can help it. And then you have the piston that actually does all of the work. So it's no wonder that there are people that have trouble actually adjusting the single piston. However, the Avid brakes are the easiest ones because of those concave washers that allow the piston, the caliper, to be properly positioned on a frame that might not be 100% straight as far as the brake mount. So if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please leave me a big thumbs up. Check out some of the other videos on the corner of the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.